Hello guys, and welcome to a new Wargame video today by me, Vulcan. I am playing on Fulda Gap, and this is the Wargame Cup Round 2. I'm not going to give anything away on the outcome of this game today, so you're just going to have to watch through and wait and see whether I go through to the next round. Now, I have analysed my opponent's strategy throughout this game, so I can comment on what he does throughout. I choose to start on the right side. Now, the first big mistake that I made was to play this when I hadn't had any sleep the night before. This was because I played this while I was at I-47. Now, I just thought it would be a good idea if I just stayed up, practiced all night on Wargame. I won every game I played. I was on a 15 win streak and I felt invulnerable, to be honest, and I came into this game and I really expected to do well. And to be honest, I do quite well. But there is a big but. Right at the beginning, you may have seen I accidentally delete my FOB. Now, the FOB for me is a big part of my strategy on Fulda Gap. Normally, I would take my FOB over here and I would use it to resupply both Mike and Lima at the same time, so we can have two command vehicles in the same FOB radius, which is insanely overpowered and incredibly easy to defend. If I had done that in this game, then the outcome may have been different, but maybe not. It really does depend. Anyway, as you can see, I've got my Sultan here with a Hempt instead of the FOB, and 3 Saracens with blowpipes and a Chaparral. Over here I have my M577 CPC, which will be moving up into Mike with a Hempt and 2 Chaparrals, and I also have a Gazelle and Gazelle cannon. Now, you can see I actually have no more troops. I have these 2 Hueys on the left with Delta Force, but that's about it. Now, the reason for this was because I was going for a quick move into Mike rush strategy. This relied a lot on whether the opponent was going to be opposite me, so that's why I've moved my command vehicle from left to right. That's the idea anyway. Now, honestly, I can tell you now that he doesn't stay opposite to me, so not only have I fucked up my chances by deleting the FOB, but my strategy that I've been planning for the whole entire weekend goes out the window completely, but I still do reasonably well. So if I just speed this up to get it started, because I basically clicked deploy almost instantly at the start and made the counter start going down as soon as I deployed all of these troops, so that he had less time, much less time, to basically sort out his own strategy. So you can see here, move the CPC straight in, got the 2 Chaparrals there to defend it. Easy as that. Then, as soon as that's done, I can move in stuff from Mike. Now, this is the point where I realise that he's got command vehicle in Alpha and not in Charlie. So, it's time to bring in the Fuchs to get across the map as quickly as possible. Bring in a couple of Chaparrals with a Hempt for the anti-air support. I know it's going to get there late, so I'm going to have to keep them nice and together. And it's now time for my Gazelle Recon to go and find out what's going on. Now, over here, my Hueys I've kind of forgotten about for now. But yeah, you must bear in mind throughout this game, it's no excuse, but I am very tired. So any mistakes I do make is probably due to that, because I had practiced a lot before this. It's just that, honestly, it was probably a bad idea to play this game. I think it was the day after the new opponents got released, so I don't think the third round's even started yet. And here you can see that with my Gazelle Recon over, I spot 2 Gazelle cannons, which is a nice thing that a lot of people on NATO do. I keep mine together and try and focus on one of his Gazelle cannons and bring my Gazelle Recon basically over behind them, so that his other Gazelle cannon can't sneak around the back and basically snipe my Recon, which is worth a lot more. Here you can see I brought my Hueys up and I'm dropping off the Delta Force a little way off from the from the India forest so that they don't get spotted so easily, and then that allows the Hueys to get out of the way for the rest of the match, unless I need to use them for some cheap recon waste units. So here you can see this Hempt, which is supposed to be refueling the Chaparral. I actually let it catch up to the Fuchs, because with him going over to the left side, it does mean that he's going to be using a very similar strategy to me. And the reason I know this was because I've been practicing this map for ages. If people switch sides, it normally means that they're trying to do an infantry rush very similar to yours. In my case, I wasn't expecting what he actually did, and here you can see he's captured India very nice and quickly, with my Delta Force getting in as quickly as possible, running their asses off to get into that forest there. And my 8 Fuchs with Jaegers arrive, and my Hempt is very close behind, and I'm going to use that to basically resupply the Fuchs as I get closer. Now I unload both of my Jaegers and Fuchs. I actually managed to take out a Saracen before he drops out the paratroopers that were in them. He does use paratroopers in this because that's why they dropped out 20 points rather than just the normal other points. So you can see here he's got Saracens and paratroopers and Chasseurs for Masse and BABs with Flak Panzer M4 2A1s. Now this instantly tells me that he's an infantry player, and I kind of assumed it at the beginning of the game, but at this point I'm not too worried because I have the upper hand. I've got the high ground, I've got the heavy cover, and my Hempts refueling, repairing all these Jaeger squads I've just taken out. Plenty of troops, and I'm winning. I'm at 110 points and he's at 40 points as I take out that last paratrooper squad to give me an extra 20. Now with that done, I move up my Jaegers to push onto the infantry, which I know will be in this forest, because with any infantry player, they don't come in small amounts. So with my big Jaeger squads all together, and the reason I keep them together is because I've noticed he's spread them out, so if I keep mine together I have an instant advantage. I'll take out his infantry squads twice as quick as he'll take out my stuff. My Chaparrals slowly moving up towards the top to take out one of the Gazelle cannons if it tries to get behind my lines. My Jaegers here are still skirmishing with the paratroopers, but I managed to spot a recon up here with the 2 Chaparrals, and I start to move them back again. So my Hempts actually run out of resupply now, and my Jaeger squads are trying their best to take out the rest of the Chasseurs for Masse and paratroopers. Now with that done, I'm assuming that he's almost like lost this sector, because you never expect anyone to have this many troops. My Delta Force didn't do too well. This Delta Force on the right here you can see is getting destroyed by the VABs, and this Delta Force here took a lot of damage from some Chasseurs for Masse. So my Jaegers move up with my Fuchs. I keep the Fuchs close just to provide extra fire support and panic the paratroopers. Yes, the paratroopers can destroy the Fuchs reasonably easily, but the Fuchs provide enough fire support to be viable against the infantry. Over here you can see I've brought forward a couple of Gazelle cannons to take care of this squad over here. Unfortunately I overlooked the fact that he's going to have even more infantry in the southwards, and unfortunately I lose a Gazelle cannon before realising, and pull the other one away as soon as possible. So with that information that there's infantry there, I move the Delta Force up to catch these Chasseurs. Now the fact that I found these Chasseurs was a bit of an annoyance for me, because I knew for a fact that he would be going very infantry heavy. Now I don't mind people who play infantry heavy as long as they play it well, and this guy most certainly did. He was a very good opponent, and well, at this point I am winning. I'm at 275 points and he's at 134 points, so I think that at this point I have the upper hand. The Chasseurs tell me that he does have a lot of other stuff left though. Whether I find it or not is a different matter. So I continue pushing through these forests with the squads I have left. I don't actually have that many troops. Over here in Bravo, I notice he's captured it. And what I do is I get these gazelle cannons and I fly them straight over the bush. Now this is to identify exactly where the command vehicle is. He's got weasels and so much stuff here, it's unbelievable. I unfortunately have no chance to get his command vehicle, but bring in a couple of Fuchs so that after the gazelle cannons go in, I can rush them straight through their lines and try and take out those guys as quickly as possible. Wasting so many gazelle cannons was probably not such a good idea, I must admit. But if the command vehicle had been in the same place, it would have been quite likely that I would have taken that out. Unfortunately, he moves it back, and because he's a great opponent, and he keeps me on my toes for the entire game, and obviously doesn't help the fact that I'm tired, because my brain is already saturated with energy drink, and well, yeah, not great. Anyway, my Jaegers are doing so much damage in this middle bush, and I managed to take out a couple more paratrooper squads, a couple more chasseur squads before the rest of them die. I bring in even more Fuchs to reinforce. Unfortunately, one chasseur squad, which costs 5 points, managed to wipe out a Fuchs and Jaeger squad with one rocket, and that's quite annoying. But with my Jaegers out, I decided to send them to the other side of the forest, because where I'd been pushing so hard in the top of India, I was trying to work out exactly where his command vehicle was in India. So with that Jaeger squad, they were going to head down into this forest at the bottom of India to see if the command vehicle was there. And that's what I was assuming. And with my Jaegers getting closer, he actually moves the command vehicle because the sector goes dark for a little bit. So I assume that I'm getting quite close, which would make sense. So I decide to keep pouring in the Jaegers and Fuchs. With him being an infantry person, I don't feel very bad at all about using so many Jaegers and Fuchs. It was basically the only counter I had on my deck to the way he was playing. I had Delta Force, but honestly, against mass infantry, which costs like half as much, it's never going to be a viable strategy to take care of that. Here you can see I've sent my Fuchs straight past these VABs, and I'm searching for that command vehicle so badly. It's exactly what I'm trying to do here. So realising that it's not going to be in those bottom bushes, I re-divert my Fuchs to the top left of India again, or at least to the left side. Here you can see another chasseur squad takes out another one of my Fuchs with one rocket. The rockets that those chasseurs have are actually really good for what they are. They don't have very good weapons to deal with other infantry, but they are good against vehicles at close range, which is exactly what he uses them for, which is really clever of him. Now, honestly, I would never recommend anyone to use the chasseurs and legion that he uses throughout this match, but if you use them correctly, they can do a lot of damage. And you can see these Fuchs getting very close to more of his defensive lines. Now, getting up here helps me realise I'm actually a lot closer in the north of India than I am in the south of India, because otherwise he wouldn't have so many defences here. So I pour out the Jaegers on the right side. Unfortunately, the Fuchs get routed, so the Jaegers are left without fire support. And on the left side, the flak panzers absolutely rout and stun the crap out of my Jaegers, which is not good. Now on the left side, you can see I brought round a couple of Gazelle cannons to take out one of his Gazelle cannons, which is left sleeping in the back. And with these Jaegers squads here, I spot this green jacket squad and take that out with the Gazelle cannons as well, giving me a few extra points because I'm still at this point in the lead. I'm at 492 points and he's at 406. So you can see my strategy has changed completely from what it would have been. I would have had like an FOB here and both my command vehicles within the FOB range, and that's what I would have done. I would have clumped in that area. But instead, because I accidentally deleted my FOB at the beginning, I had to completely improvise my strategy. Now, that meant that I moved my troops up into Mike to capture that, and I also captured Juliet and Charlie, just so I could get closer to where he was bringing his troops in. This meant that I could basically get a lot better recon on what he was doing. Now at this point I was really annoyed because I was trying desperately to find his command vehicle, and you can see he's still got it in India. No matter how much infantry and presence I have there, he's still just holding that command vehicle back, which is a good sign of a good player, because he only moves it when he has to. And a lot of people will move it because they're scared of something. In this case, he didn't have to be scared, because he knew that every approach was going to be covered by the infantry that he'd spammed around it. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's perfectly viable that he's spammed infantry around the side, around his command vehicle, because it's a good defense. It's a good defense line. And any helicopters that fly over such a massive forest are going to die, no matter what. Especially when you're using flak houses as well. So on a map where a lot of the points are dominated by big chunks of forest, I should have really seen that coming. But unfortunately I missed it along the way. Anyway, having won all the previous matches that I practiced, I think I played about 5 before I played this one. I had won every one, so I was completely oblivious to this kind of tactic, as I'd never really faced it before. I knew that if somebody played on the switch side, they would play infantry. I knew that. But what I wasn't used to was this strategy that somebody went to Bravo in India. Now, there may be some other players out there, some more pro players than me, who know this strategy better than I do, because I don't play Wargame as much as I probably should to be giving people tutorials about it. But what I am good at is giving rational explanation for the things I do. And that's why I provide Wargame videos for you guys, because not many people actually do that. A lot of the big players actually stream, so if you really want to see like some really good tips and tricks, then go and watch them stream. Here you can see in the north side of the map, Bravo, I've brought in a rep for mass squad, or a 2E rep squad, to cover Bravo and find out what the hell's going on, because he literally just has infantry, and I'm trying to find out where the bulk of his forces are. We both started with 1,500 points. I've taken out 578 points worth of that, and I still haven't found the mass of his infantry. And that's worrying at this point. I know he could have held points back, because I definitely saw a lot of reinforcements coming in. But with my Jaegers continuously moving forwards in India on both sides, and me not finding this command vehicle, was the most frustrating thing I have ever experienced in Wargame. And I don't know if it was just frustrating because I was tired, or whether it was frustrating because it just was, and the fact that I kept bumping into countless amounts of infantry. But in all honesty, it was the most insane game I've ever had on this game. Here you can see I brought in 4 rise patterns. This was kind of a good idea because they react well to infantry. But as I saw the VIBs coming across the forest, I also had to bring in these Jaegers and Flux that you can see here to protect this forest from the flanking round towards my command vehicle, because he's going from forest to forest to get closer to me. So I stopped the rise patterns before he can get his infantry close, and try and take out as many of those VIBs as possible before they hit my Flux. In the middle of the map, I'm still skirmishing with his chasseur for mass and whatever else he has left, but he's still teasing me by keeping that command vehicle there and continuously moving it by making the sector go dark and then bringing it back up again. He's obviously moving it around, and I was hoping the whole time that he would accidentally bump into one of these random infantry units or APCs that could take it out. So anyway, with my rise patterns coming in and spotting those VABs, there's not really much I can do about it. So his VABs run off into the forest behind. I assume they don't have anything in them, because when I've been destroying the ones before, they've only been giving me 10 points, which is how much a VAB's worth. And here you can see even more, so that he's basically been dropping off the infantry into India and then sending his VAB to go and find my command vehicle, which is, as I say before, a really viable strategy, except for the fact when I spot this lot coming behind me. This is really the point where I shit my pants, and seeing this amount of infantry really brought it home where the hell his APCs have been the entire time. So here you can see he's got masses of infantry, and I try and bring in a few more to sort of stop the rush a little bit, but they just get instantly destroyed by the chasseurs and legion that he brings in. Up here I've brought in some more Fuchs and Jaegers, but they get taken out by some VABs. But with this VAB push down towards Juliet, he basically forces me completely to just run away with everything I have, and that's what you can see here when I'm bringing my Sultan away from that. Unfortunately down here he brought a few VABs straight towards my command vehicle and I had no time to react. I absolutely forgot about that, and he captures a Hempt in the process. This Hempt here also gets captured, and basically it resupplies and refuels all of his infantry for the rest of the game. Here I brought back my Sultans. Basically I'm going to regroup in Charlie. That is the idea, because this amount of infantry is only countered by a big, bold defense. So with that, I'm basically trying to counter this as best I can. I am panicking completely, and it's quite obvious because I leave these random units behind without really thinking about it. Something that I accidentally do throughout this game, again because I was probably tired, but also because of the strategy that he used, and the fact that he was actually just dominating me from now on, because he had so many units that he literally surrounded me in less than, I don't know, 2 minutes once those VABs arrived on my radar. Now basically the route that the VABs took from his base after I watched the replay, they went all the way around here, and I mean like literally the end of the map, all the way around until they hit the back of my basically all my command vehicles. Here you can see my reactive defense. I brought in Hueys with Delta Force. I've left a couple of Delta Force at my main reinforcement point from now on, and I've also got these rise patterns being repaired and refueled by this Hempt. Now unfortunately his VAB shoot down my Gazelle Recon, which is a big blow to me because I'm very low on points at this point from reacting to all this heavy infantry that he's got. I've moved back both my Sultans and pushed forwards infantry to counteract the push. So I'm basically doing a rolling retreat with my important units and sending forward units that I wouldn't really necessarily care if they died. In this case, it's my Jaegers to try and counter what he's pushed towards me. So now I'm basically cornered. I've got these units in the middle of the map. They can't really do very much. I am trying my best to scout around with them to try and find this command vehicle and do some damage. I'm only 400 points behind, but considering the amount of infantry he has, that means I have to destroy so many to just get back the points. Over here, because of his VABs, I accidentally lose 2 cannons, Gazelle cannons, and they both die in vain. But basically, as I was saying, because he's using lots and lots of units, it means I have to do a lot more damage to acquire the same points, which is the big annoying thing about this. So say if he was bringing Leopard 2s against me, it wouldn't probably matter, because I could get an Apache and snipe them, a lot like what I did in my first Wargame game. I relied a lot on my Apaches and I just destroyed him at the last minute. In this game, I was behind and I was trying to think of some way that I could do a similar thing, but there was no way. There was no way at this point that I was going to be able to destroy enough of his infantry without him just purely running away that I could actually win. So, having really realised that, it was more just a fact of surviving as long as I can and hoping he keeps throwing stuff at me to give me enough points to win. Because he doesn't have like an insane margin at the moment, I could take out a couple of his CVs and that would be the end of the game. So if I found both of his CVs in, say, Bravo and India, then that would be GG, because that would basically win me the game. But unfortunately, as you can see with these Gazelle cannons, I was being really desperate at this point, trying to just get a cannon over it and shoot it, but he was so well defended around his CV for the entire battle, I couldn't get anywhere near it. Now, the reason I'm bringing in Delta Force so much at this point in the game is because I've actually ran out of Fuchs. So, because he has so many infantry units from Chasseur Famas, Chasseurs, Legion, and Paratroopers all on his deck, they basically wipe out all of my Jaegers and leave me nothing left to play with. So here you can see I've got 4 Saracens with Paratroopers and obviously all the Delta Force, which I use to basically counteract the infantry. These 2 Delta Force squads down here, I basically use them to push down this forest and clear that all out so that nothing can get too close to my rise patterns. And as you can see here, I've split up all my Fuchs to basically try and find that CV I've been looking for the entire game. But as that happens, I'm just spotting more and more units all around me. I've got these VABs coming up the centre road, I've got the VABs coming down the southern road, and the VABs going into the eastern forest. So I am absolutely fucked. I'm going to say this now. There is 16 minutes left on the clock, and I was basically just trying to get my head around something I could do to get back into this game. And the only thing I could think of was basically turtle defense to stop anything that he threw at me. And then try and snipe his CVs if I could, which is what these Fuchs are trying to do on the left, and these Gazelle cannons are trying to do up here. But at this point, he's just got so much map presence compared to me that there's nothing I can do about it. I've been forced to literally bring in as much infantry as I can to defend my reinforcement point, that I honestly didn't really have enough to even defend my command vehicle anymore, because I was running out of points. Where he held the middle sector for the whole time, I couldn't do anything to get enough points back. So I bring in a Gazelle recon to try and have a look around. These Hueys up here and the Hueys down here are just basically trying to stay out of the way now, so that they don't cost me any points, because at this point I am literally not ready to waste a single unit. I've got 3 Hemps here to act as kind of an FOB. They've got 4,500 supplies between them, just ready to basically resupply anything that needs it when I get attacked. And this is a reasonably solid defense. I've got plenty of Jaegers there, ready to take a big chunk of damage should they need to. So yeah, another reason that this game didn't go so well was because I hadn't played NATO versus NATO in about a month at least, because I don't have many people to practice with. To me, a NATO tactician with a similar strategy to me, as a matter of fact, I didn't expect that, and there's something that really threw me, because my strategy was similar to his. He had all those FA and those VABs with chasseurs ready to basically rush around the left side of the map and hit me in Gulf should I be there. My strategy was to get into Lima and push into Mike, and then reinforce at Mike and push into Juliet and Charlie. That was my strategy. So it was a very similar strategy and relied on infantry, just that he executed his a lot better in comparison. And I relied too much on expensive infantry to take out his cheap infantry, which was smothering the entire map as this game went on. So you see, I'm basically forced to create almost like a donut around a donut defense. That's a new one. A donut defense around my reinforcement point to stop him getting any infantry under that and destroying them. Here you can see I brought in a Saracen with paratroopers to take care of this one Legion squad that's sitting in this place up here. Unfortunately, these Legion squads have 2 HE power and managed to easily take out that paratrooper squad, which also has 2 HE power, but the difference was that the Legion FOMAS had the house, which gives them heavy cover to work with. Now, as these VABs come in the back, they actually managed to snipe 3 of my AML-60s, which just adds insult to injury. Unfortunately for him, they drive straight past my Sultan without noticing, and just get sniped by my Rise patterns as they continue down the road. Now, if he'd been a bit more careful, he probably could have taken out that Sultan there, but luckily for me that did not happen, and I managed to get it back and push some Jaeger squads up to that road to give me a better defense on that side. So I'm relying a lot on these Rise patterns at the moment. I've just gone over 1,100 points, and I'm sort of catching up with him in a way, but with that Chasseur squad adding insult to injury of my complete lack of concentration at this point, then it's just annoying. It really was. He was bringing in these Chasseur squads everywhere and just pinning down my troops wherever I put them. No matter where it was on the map, they were always there. Nothing much I could really do. So anyway, I'm still thinking at this point, what is the best counter to spam infantry? Now, infantry is obviously the easy choice, but I'm running low on it. As I said earlier, I'd actually ran out of Fuchs and Jaegers by this point, and I was relying a lot on Delta Force and paratroopers. So what else is there? Well, there's artillery and tanks. Now, I've already got some tanks, but I do have enough points which I've been slightly saving to bring in something a bit more substantial. I decided to go for artillery. Now, artillery is not on the map yet, but it probably wasn't the best decision I've ever made in Wargame. That's all I'm going to say. And honestly, it may have lost me the map. The trouble is, I feel I lost this as soon as I started. With my FOB accidentally deleted, I could have probably asked for a restart, but I don't really care as much at the start as I did at the end. But yeah, with the FOB gone, that was my strategy completely wiped out the water. Maybe if I had that FOB, it would have been easy to defend against so much infantry. But because I didn't have that, and I had to spread out my CVs to gain control of many points, his smother infantry tactics really worked well. And by no means is this guy Lassigal a bad player because he did that. Honestly, he was one of the best players I've ever played against. Being able to do that to someone takes a lot of micromanagement and ultimately skill. So micromanagement in Wargame isn't something you often see, because the number one guy in the world has like 14 APM, which is 14 action per minute, and that is nothing for a competitive game. Honestly, that is nothing. In all seriousness though, this guy must have had at least 20 to pull off this sort of game that he did, keeping an eye on his India command vehicle, on his Bravo command vehicle, only having 2 CVs throughout the entire game. It's pretty good for this kind of match on such a big map. It's a very good thing to be able to do, especially when you hold the biggest sector on the map. I probably should have seen it coming that India would have been the most important sector on the map, but I overlooked it because my strategy didn't include going to India. But he adapted a lot better than I did. I moved up to Mike and Juliet and Charlie, and he basically moved across the map towards India and Bravo, which even though these sectors are worth the same amount of points, he already had his strategy with all his units ready to go. my strategy relied a lot on my reinforcements, and because I didn't put so many units on the field at the beginning, I didn't have a solid strategy to go with. And the reason I did that was purely because I lost my FOB. So losing this game, I am going to tell you now that I lose, there is no miracle comeback like there was in the first Wargame game. It wasn't something that I felt bad about. I felt I'd lost to a decent player who'd basically beaten me. And I was obviously still fighting at this point, and I was still trying to think of ways that I could win, but in all honesty, there wasn't much I could do now. It was literally a waiting game to see what he would do to try and finish the game, if anything, because he had the points now. That's all he needed as an infantry strategy. On an infantry strategy, all you need is a bunch of points, and then you can just basically spread yourself out across the map, and you're going to do more damage than it's worth to try and find the enemy. So here you can see I brought in those 4 artillery pieces I was talking about, actually M109s, which I did decide weren't as good as Abbott's, but the upgraded version of them is a lot better than the Abbott's. But the M109s were the cheapest unit at this point, so I bought in what I could, and I started to RT into India with the help of the foot, which was still there trying to find stuff that was left. However, I did literally just bump into so many AMX-30B Valorizers, Rise Patterns, M15182 toes, and Hemps, all resupplying them, and my Rise Patterns literally got completely ambushed. And the reason he could do that was because where I'd been forced out of my congealia, I had no supply points or reinforcement points to help myself win the game. Whereas he, because he'd held India for the entire game, had masses of points to be able to do that. And that literally told me I'd lost. And I know it's probably not such a good idea to be, oh, you've lost, it's such a bad mentality, but honestly, the amount of Wargame games I've actually looked at on replays, I can pretty much guarantee that this was a loss by now. And it's actually the first loss that I've ever brought you, but I guaranteed that I would bring you the second Wargame game, and I have. And it's a good one to analyse, and it shows you good swarm tactics. He's brought in some AMX Alpha 1s to RT, basically where he thought my command vehicles were for the rest of the game. He starts rushing forwards all of his infantry to basically do the final blow into my men. All of his artillery basically damage the crap out of my forces, and I'm forced to push back these Sultans as the Jaegers take care of the VABs. But there honestly isn't much I can really do at this point. You can see here the masses of forces I was talking about. He's got these AMX-30B Valorizers with Rise Patterns, M15182 toes, and all of the infantry and Hemps that come with it. 4 minutes left, and I basically got Gazelle, which all it does really is tell me that doom is coming. And I decide, in a desperate measure, to bring in helicopters to save the day once again. Now he has that reinforcement point slightly covered, and obviously sees these AH-1E Cobras coming. The reason I picked these guys was because they do have toes missiles, and they will be able to do a reasonable amount of damage to his tanks to get good amount of points back to basically win the round. Unfortunately, the Sultan that I was hiding back from all these VABs gets sniped to shit by some Rise Patterns and Valorizers. But basically, with this massive force pushing up to my base, I thought this was my big break. In my last game, it was a similar thing. I brought in helicopters to basically wipe out some really expensive units, and to me, his Valorizes and Rise patterns were expensive units in this case. And I thought, hell, if I brought in some AH-1E Cobras, maybe I could do enough damage to get enough points back. But saying that, I was 1,000 points back at this point, and with only 2 minutes 35 left on the clock, and my AH-1E Cobras being pushed back, there was never anything else I was going to be able to do. Continues to pound my defensive line with artillery for the rest of the game, and it ultimately destroys most of my troops. This little cone around the reinforcement point of Charlie basically stays there for the rest of the game because I'm too scared to move it. If I move that defensive line and he moves into my reinforcement points when I bring in reinforcement points, I'm dead. So I had to leave that there to basically make sure that that didn't happen. And with that there was nothing else I could do. I had no mobility left. All of my guys are infantry. I've got artillery. I've got a helicopter which can barely do anything because they're being shot down by Gazelle cannons. And yeah, this is GG right now. I think I'd already said it by now, and I was literally just waiting for the game to end. There was no miracle that could happen, which was really unfortunate. I was quite disappointed that I lost this game for you guys because I was really looking forward to getting quite far in this tournament. But in all honesty, I'm glad I lost to this guy because he showed me something that I'd never seen before really done well in Wargame, and that was like almost infantry rush, but it wasn't because he had to change his strategy to counteract what I was doing, and I think being able to do that made him a good player to me. If he'd just spammed me with infantry like straight on, then I would have probably seen it differently. But the fact that he managed to spread himself out and basically get around all my defences and sneak in the backs of all my fucking command vehicles, honestly, he did a really good job. And I think he deserved this win. Very much so, as I just try to pepper as many of his troops as I can before the rest of my units die or the game ends. There's 15 seconds left now, and honestly, I hope you've enjoyed this game, guys. It's obviously a loss, and I'm not sad to bring you a loss. I am sad to obviously be out of the Wargame Cup, but in all honesty, I think this was a really good game to show you guys. And with that, the game is ended, and he wins by 1,078 points. 1,078 points. So he's pretty much beaten me fair and square. Total victory to him, and that was GG. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It was a long 40-minute match of me getting absolutely owned. Hopefully you saw or got a lot of insight and learning from that game. As I said earlier, I'm no pro player, so if I'd done anything wrong there, please don't be offended or whatever. I was extremely tired, as I said, but I obviously was extremely disappointed when I lost this. Hats off to him for beating me, and I hope he does well in the rest of the tournament. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. See you in the next one, guys. Goodbye.